Moonlit Escapade. Under the soft glow of the moon, Julia's auburn hair gleamed as she nervously thumbed through her set of keys. Finding the one she had discreetly copied earlier, she slid it into the lock with a smooth twist. With a quick glance at the dim shadows behind her, she and Mia slipped into the quiet darkness, softly shutting the door behind them. In the pitch-black room, Julia flicked on her tiny flashlight and reached for Mia's hand. "We're okay, don't worry," she whispered, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Mia's hand was cold, and Julia squeezed it gently for reassurance as they moved through the quiet corridor, the flashlight casting soft, dancing shadows on the whitewashed walls. "Are you sure we should be doing this?" Mia asked in a low voice. Julia gave her a calming smile. "No one comes here this late. Trust me," she whispered back, squeezing her hand tighter as they continued walking. The narrow hallway echoed with each step, amplifying the sense of mystery. As they approached a door at the far end, Julia felt her own nerves begin to stir. Despite her efforts to stay calm, she fumbled for the second key, slipped it into the lock, and they stepped inside. The room was large, with high ceilings and walls that reflected the dim light in eerie patterns. In the center of the room was a small indoor pool, with steam gently rising from the water. Mia set her bag in the corner and gazed at the inviting water. "It looks so warm in here," she said with a relieved smile. Julia smiled back. "What are we waiting for then?" Both girls started to undress, leaving their clothes in a messy pile beside their bags. Mia kicked off her shoes, letting them fall where they may. With a quick motion, she pulled off her jacket, laughing softly as Julia mimicked her. The water was warm and soothing as they dipped in, the worries of sneaking around fading with each gentle ripple. Julia dove in first, emerging with a breath of relief. "It's perfect," she called to Mia, who smiled as she waded in after her. The room echoed softly with their laughter as they floated in the pool, their friendship carrying them into an easy rhythm. "This was such a good idea," Mia said, leaning back to float on her back, staring up at the ceiling as the warmth of the water enveloped her. "See? I told you." Julia laughed, playfully splashing Mia. In return, Mia shot a stream of water back, and soon the room was filled with joyful splashes and giggles. After a while, they grew quiet again, the peacefulness of the moment sinking in. They floated side by side, staring up at the moonlight streaming through the high windows. It was in these quiet moments, away from the world, that they felt a deep sense of connection. "Thanks for bringing me here," Mia said softly, resting her head on Julia's shoulder as they floated close to the edge of the pool. "Anytime," Julia whispered back, grateful for the peaceful, simple beauty of the moment. There was something about being here together under the quiet moonlight that felt right. Eventually, knowing they couldn't stay forever, they climbed out of the pool, drying each other with quiet laughter and a shared sense of joy. The warmth lingered as they dressed, their movements slow and relaxed. As they locked the door behind them and retraced their steps, there was no sense of regret, just the quiet satisfaction of a secret shared, a bond strengthened, and the memory of a perfect moonlit escapade. As Julia and Mia stepped out of the pool room, their clothes clinging to their damp skin, they couldn't help but glance at each other and smile. The cool night air outside the building felt refreshing, but it was the warmth of their shared adventure that lingered between them. As they made their way back through the shadowed corridors, Mia gently tugged on Julia's hand, slowing their pace. "I'm really glad we did this," she whispered, her voice soft but full of sincerity. Julia turned to face her, their eyes meeting in the dim light. There was a spark between them, something unspoken but deeply felt. The quiet of the night, the stillness around them, it made everything feel more intimate. Julia gently brushed a damp strand of hair away from Mia's face, her fingers lingering on her cheek for a moment longer than necessary. "I am too," Julia replied, her voice barely above a whisper, as though the moment was too delicate to be broken by anything louder. They stood there for a moment, the silence wrapping around them like a blanket. The distant sound of crickets chirping outside the building was the only noise, and even that seemed far away. Julia's hand, still resting against Mia's cheek, slowly slid down to cup her face, her thumb brushing lightly over Mia's skin. Mia leaned into the touch, her eyes closing briefly, savoring the warmth and tenderness. Julia's heart raced, and though part of her felt a flutter of nerves, it was overshadowed by the feeling of calm and comfort that Mia brought her. Without overthinking it, she leaned in, her lips softly grazing Mia's. The kiss was slow, gentle, and filled with the quiet emotion that had been building between them all night. Mia responded, her arms slipping around Julia's waist as she pulled her closer, deepening the kiss just slightly, enough to show how much this moment meant to her. When they finally pulled apart, their foreheads rested against each other, both of them smiling softly, their breaths mingling in the cool air. "Did you always know?" Mia asked quietly, her voice a gentle whisper between them. Julia smiled, a little shy but honest. "I think I always felt something. But tonight it just felt right." Mia's fingers lightly traced circles on Julia's back, sending shivers down her spine despite the warmth of their closeness. "It does feel right," she said, her eyes shining with emotion as she gazed at Julia. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, for a few more moments before Julia gave Mia's hand a playful tug. "Come on, let's go somewhere with a view of the stars," she said, her voice light but filled with excitement. Mia's face lit up as she nodded. Together, they made their way outside, the crisp night air hitting them as they emerged from the building. The campus was quiet, the world around them bathed in the soft glow of the moon. Julia led Mia to a small hill near the edge of the grounds, where the view opened up to a sky filled with stars. They lay side by side on the soft grass, their hands still intertwined. "Look," Julia said, pointing at the sky. "That's Orion's belt." Mia smiled, leaning her head on Julia's shoulder. "I've always loved the stars," she said softly, her voice filled with wonder. "They remind me how small we are, but at the same time, how connected everything is." Julia turned her head slightly, kissing the top of Mia's head. "I like that," she whispered. For a while they lay there in comfortable silence, watching the stars twinkle above them. The world felt far away, and all that mattered was this moment, the two of them, and the quiet understanding that had blossomed between them. Mia's hand rested lightly on Julia's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. "You make me feel safe," she murmured, her voice almost lost in the breeze. Julia's heart swelled at the words, and she tightened her hold on Mia, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I'll always keep you safe," she whispered back. They stayed like that for what felt like hours, their hearts beating in sync under the vast expanse of the night sky. It was as if time had slowed just for them, giving them this perfect fleeting moment of connection and peace. As the stars continued to shimmer above them, Julia and Mia knew that this night, this shared adventure, was only the beginning of something deeper, something more meaningful. And under the moonlit sky they both felt it, love, quiet and pure, blooming between them like a beautiful secret. As the night deepened, the cool breeze ruffled the grass around them, carrying the scent of the earth and distant pine trees. Julia and Mia remained lying on the hill, their fingers still intertwined, basking in the simplicity of being together. There was no need for words now. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken promises and shared warmth. Mia shifted slightly, resting her head more comfortably against Julia's shoulder. "I've never felt this way before," she murmured, her voice soft as if speaking too loudly might break the magic of the moment. "Like, everything just makes sense." Julia smiled, her gaze fixed on the stars but her heart entirely focused on Mia. "Me neither," she whispered back. She tilted her head to look at Mia, whose face glowed softly in the moonlight, serene and content. Julia couldn't help but reach out, brushing a loose strand of hair from Mia's face. They shared a quiet smile, the kind that needed no words to convey the depth of what they were feeling. Julia leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to Mia's forehead, lingering there as she breathed in the closeness, the tenderness between them. "I don't want this night to end," Mia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper as she nestled closer to Julia, feeling the steady rise and fall of her chest. Julia chuckled softly, the sound gentle and full of affection. "Who says it has to?" she teased lightly. "We can stay here as long as we want. Watch the stars. Make more memories." Mia's heart swelled at the idea. "More memories with you sounds perfect," she whispered. They lay there for what felt like an eternity, time moving at its own slow pace, the world around them fading into the background. The stars above twinkled like tiny, scattered diamonds in the velvet sky, watching over them as they shared this perfect moment of quiet love. Eventually, Mia tilted her head to look up at Julia. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, her voice soft, her fingers lightly tracing patterns on Julia's arm. Julia glanced down at her, her heart full of tenderness. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am," she said honestly, "to be here right now with you." Mia's cheeks flushed, her smile widening as she looked at Julia. "I'm the lucky one," she replied, her voice laced with emotion. Julia shook her head, leaning down to press her forehead against Mia's. "We're both lucky," she whispered, "because we found each other." Their lips met again, this time softer, slower, like a promise of all the moments yet to come, of a future filled with shared adventures, laughter, and quiet nights like this. When they finally pulled apart, Mia's eyes sparkled with unshed tears, but her smile was brighter than the stars. "I don't know what tomorrow holds," she said quietly, "but I know I want you there with me." Julia felt a lump in her throat, overwhelmed by the simplicity and sincerity of the words. "I'll be there," she whispered back, her voice full of conviction. "Always." With that promise hanging in the air, they fell into a comfortable silence again, simply enjoying the closeness. The night stretched on, the stars above watching over them as they shared their love in the quiet sanctuary of the world they had created together. As the first light of dawn began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and orange, Julia and Mia sat up, their hands still intertwined. "We should go," Mia said reluctantly, though she didn't move. "The day is coming." Julia nodded, though she, too, felt the reluctance of leaving this magical night behind. But instead of feeling sad, she smiled. "It's okay," she said. "We'll have more nights like this. Many more." Mia smiled back, her heart filled with the certainty that Julia's words were true. Slowly they stood, brushing the grass from their clothes, and hand in hand, they made their way back down the hill, toward whatever the future held. As they walked side by side, their hearts were light, filled with the kind of love that blossoms slowly and fully, deep, genuine, and pure. And though the night was ending, they both knew this was only the beginning of their story together. One filled with endless possibilities and a love that would carry them through every moment to come. And as they disappeared into the dawn, two souls intertwined, the world around them seemed a little brighter, a little more beautiful, just like their love.